the National Geographic conundrum where you're like, okay, I'm watching this adorable ferret get eaten by a cheetah. I'm filming this for National Geographic. Do I step in and save the ferret, or do I let nature take its course?
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Star Trek Discovery Recap FREQcast. I'm your host, Anita Sarkeesian, and with me on the bridge is my fellow Starfleet Command, Ebony Adams. What's up, Ebony?
What's up, Anita, fellow officer?
How was that for like a real intro and not some half-ass shit we did last week?
I know, right? Like we are trying to get better.
We are.
You might not recognize it, but actual effort was involved in the creation of this week's recap show.
Okay, before we get into it, I just want to remind everyone that you all can help bring us this hot Star Trek jibber jabber every week to the airwaves by pitching in a few bucks at d.rip/femfreak, which also goes to help us make all of our great podcasts that we do at Feminist Frequency, our nonprofit that relies on donations from you. So please head over to d.rip/femfreak, because as much as I complain about this, I really want to keep doing it.
Same.
All right, on this week's show, we are going to give you our thoughts about New Eden, which is episode number 2 of Star Trek Discovery's second season. Ebony, you want to give us a little summary of what happened this week?
Absolutely. Let me give you my captain's log, star date, whatever. A new signal appears, prompting Stamets' emotional return to the mycelial network and leading Burnham, Pike, and Awoshikun to a pre-warp planet where they face a complex ethical dilemma. Tilly's overeagerness lands her in trouble, but when the planet and Discovery's landing party are threatened, her curiosity may be the one thing that can save them. Woo!
Dun, dun, dun. Cool. All right, so let's get into this. Ebony came up with a cute segment title called Level 1 Diagnostic for us to talk about our half-baked thoughts on what transpired. I don't know if we need a segment title, so y'all pitch it. Not pitch in. Well, yes, do pitch in
if you agree with me. If you don't agree with me, just sit back and listen and, suck your teeth. Here's the thing. Level 1 Diagnostic, clearly shout out to the best Star Trek. We can all agree on that, right? Which is TNG, Next Generation. Mad love for that show. So, yeah, it was just a shout out.
It's the only thing that binds our Star Trek love, really.
Pretty much, because those of y'all who write in and who are like, hey, when are you going to talk about Voyager? Never. I'm never, ever going to talk about Voyager with Anita in any sustained capacity. Nor is she going to talk about Deep Space Nine with me.
That's not true. I think that one day we will be able to... I feel like we should have fake sleepovers where we don't sleep at each other's homes. But I thought that would be cute to say. Where you watch an episode of Voyager and then we watch an episode of DS9, and I think that this is a good plan.
I am totally down for that, for the fake sleepover. I do think that we need to do more than one episode, though, because I don't think you'll really get a sense of what makes DS9 so great. Of course. And I am willing to watch. I mean, I've seen several episodes of Voyager, but I'm willing to be led by you.
Yeah, man, I watched 3 seasons of Deep Space Nine. Like multiple times. I've tried to give that show a chance multiple times. Yeah, I also got this. I was at a dinner party 2 nights ago, and I got the same, like, oh, you don't like Deep Space Nine? Anyways, okay, we're not here to talk about that.
No, we are. We're here to talk about my level 1 diagnostic.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're doing. So, yeah, okay, look, Ebony.
Yeah.
I
know what you're going to say.
What? What am I going to say?
You did not hate this episode.
I liked it. I didn't just not hate it. Like, I liked it.
Same. I was in a really weird position that fairly early in the episode, I was like, what is this? What is this feeling? It's familiar.
It's so confusing.
It's familiar, but I haven't had it in a while. I actually, this feels Star Trek-y. I like it. And then, realize, the episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes, who I think is actually a very good director of Star Trek stuff. Yeah, like Riker, what up, number 1? You did it. You did the damn thing.
I think that hurts me because I was like, look, last episode, the thing I didn't talk about on the podcast was that I really liked the away mission. of that episode. Like I liked that they were like flying
same.
through space and trying. Like I feel like I just got so caught up in hating the shit that I forgot to mention the part that I actually liked and that felt good.
Yeah, like did we mention Tig Notaro at all in last week's episode? I don't think so.
We mentioned her, but we didn't like go into it too much. But the thing is that I feel like this episode, I was like, this is really good. Like I literally like everything that's happening here. And with the little bit from episode 1 into this, I'm like, oh my God, could this season actually be good? And you just completely crushed my soul and spirit by telling me that it was directed by Jonathan Frakes.
Why?
Who's not going to be directing the whole season.
Oh, well, yeah.
Because it means that it's not going to be consistently this good.
Well,
although the story was good, so like maybe we'll get better story beats.
That's what I'm hoping. Like it was a good story, and it harkened back to sort of the fun of Star Trek, you know, which is, you know, encountering other peoples, other cultures, and this kind of wide-eyed optimism about who are we and who do we say we are, and what does it mean to actually hold true to those principles. Now, as much as I love this episode, there was some incredibly clunky writing. The exposition on this show, it remains so unwieldy, like straight up. This is like screenwriting 101 level. Don't do this in terms of exposition. Like, you know, when the away team that you love, the away mission rather, when they go down to, you know, New Eden, whatever, Terra Lithia or whatever the planet was called, and they go to that like, you know, harvest ceremony, and the head woman was like, as you know,
for like
you know,
5 hours.
For like 5 minutes. And I'm like, yeah, if we know it, this is so, you know, this is so fake. This is not the way people would talk in these situations. You can find a better way to let the audience know what's going on here. Like, whatever. But still, my attention was captivated this entire show.
And that's the thing. This episode, like, you really hit the nail on it with the fact that it felt so Star Trek-y, right? And I think that that's what, you know, like, I'm wondering if the general audience appreciates that or not, or what a Star Trek audience today actually wants. Because to me, like, the Prime Directive is a really interesting moral conundrum. Those are always really interesting episodes. Yeah. And I also like that they called it General Order 1. Like, is it because the word Prime Directive didn't come around for a while, or was that just like a fun thing that they did?
Yeah, no, I think it's because it's early. In the timeline.
So yeah, like that whole thing. And one thing that I think religion's not my favorite topic or my favorite issue, but I am enjoying at least this, what is going to be an ongoing thread of like religion and science and looking, how do you look and perceive things, right?
Yeah.
The end of the episode talked about like when you have new context, your perception changes. And so this discussion about these visions that are coming through that are connected to these signals that Discovery is trying to figure out. Is it an angel? Is it science? Is it faith? Right? Like,
right.
And I think that I really like the relationship that's developing between Pike and Michael, right? Where like he really respects her a lot.
Yeah.
And she feels confident enough to talk to him about her, like, to eat, like, even though she's her captain, she's still like, these are the things I think you should be doing.
Yeah.
Right. And he respects that and then does it because he knows she's smart. So like, man, I really like this fucking episode.
I know, and I know that you are blowing the minds of our audience. Like,
I know,
is this the same podcast? If Anita is not fully in hate with what she's just watched, feels
it'll
weird.
Come back. You know, the show can't be consistent.
Yeah, one of the things that I think made this episode so Star Trek-y is that this episode really highlighted, you know, how compelling it is when you see like a team working together, right? Like one of the strengths of Star Trek has been the notion of this crew that is working collaboratively and collectively, you know, in the service of this grand mission, right? And so although I am not totally comfortable with Burnham having less of the spotlight, because the people that we are seeing her share it with are so great to me, like Tilly, you know, I'm fully on board. Like, you can give me all Tilly all the time and I will be absolutely in love with that show. Absolutely.
It is
in love with that show.
This episode definitely was better because there was so much really interesting, fun shit with Tilly, right? Like,
Yeah.
she is struggling with compassion and care and following rules that it, like, you know, like she harmed herself and put the ship at risk to be able to help Stamets because she has so much care and compassion for him. And like, I like that it didn't fully backfire. I like that she got some redemption in this episode, right? Where she figured out how to stop a nuclear apocalypse. We've talked about how I can't say the word nuclear, whatever. You know,
or apocalypse for that matter.
That's true. Or most words really in the English language. Oh God, yeah. Anyways, I loved her, and I really loved. Like, I screenshotted when May says, "Your mind is so much fun," to Tilly, because I was like, "Yes,
it absolutely
like you're saying
is
what we think," and it's so delightful watching her process this stuff.
Yes,
I love her.
I love her too. Now, I don't know anything about the actor who plays Tilly, Mary Wiseman. I think I don't think that she herself is on the autism spectrum. I don't think she identifies as being neuroatypical. But so I should know that, and I will look it up. But I do like that the show is refusing to kind of walk back that initial characterization that Tilly, as a neuroatypical person, is going to behave, understand, and think through things, you know, in her own way. And so the way that they show her like hyper focus when, yes, she has a mission and she wants to figure things out. And it's not some cold-blooded, robotic, you know, kind of, I'm doing this purely to solve a puzzle kind of thing. It's because, yes, like she has, when she connects deeply with someone, whether that's Saru, who she considers to be a mentor, or Burnham, who she absolutely looks up to, or Stamets, you know, like she will do anything to help those people, even to her own detriment. And I love that we're getting that from her, and that the show is allowing her to kind of take center stage, particularly because as a plus size person, we do not often get to see this, you know, like it is so awesome that we are seeing someone who's not, you know, the kind of like standard slender model in the tight Starfleet uniform. I know it seems like a small thing, but it is so not. It is so not. It matters that we see women like her. And it matters that like in key moments where I got the confidence porn I was looking for in this episode, you see like a Welshikun at the con. You see Lieutenant Detmer. You see Tilly like sharing a look. And I'm like, look at all these badass women. Look at all these badass women on the bridge being like, we did that shit. We did that shit. Oh my God.
Yeah,
this was good.
totally.
Jonathan Frakes, I salute you, sir.
Yeah. And it's funny, actually, there's a whooshing at the very beginning. There's a pan that like whooshes from one room to the other to the bridge to different people. And I was like, oh, interesting. I wonder who the director, like I literally like, oh, I wonder who like directed this, but I didn't look it up. So it all makes sense. So a couple of things that I noticed in this episode that I think are worth mentioning, also noticed in the first episode, but didn't like that. So fuck it. Is they are making it a point to name the characters. So in the last season, we talked a lot about how we're like, who the fuck was that person's name? We'd have to look it up on IMDb.
Right.
We're like, who are these black people in the background that we don't ever hear their names or whatever? And in this one, and like in the first episode, they literally did a roll call, which I thought was a fun, creative way to do that, I guess, you know, like if you had to. And this one, they're literally, and it didn't feel contrived in this episode. So like Bryce is the name of the black man who's a communications officer. And you're like, cool, I didn't know that. Awoshiku gets to be on an away mission. I don't like that she doesn't really talk much. She doesn't do a lot. Like they definitely got her. I liked the moment where she was like, oh, I just need a battery and then I can unhook this thing. I like that she got to do something that helps them, but she still feels very background, and I'm hoping that changes.
See, I feel like they're setting it up, like going on that away mission. It means that more space will be carved for her,
and they gave her some backstory. Yeah, they gave her some backstory, which I hope they follow up on too.
Same, and I think, you know, talking about things that are important, it is very rare in a story, in any form of media, if there needs to be some discussion of spirituality, religion, etc., that narrative weight is typically carried by the people of color in the cast, whether it's like wise, indigenous person, magical Negro, whatever. So I love the fact that both of the Black women we see on that away mission are like, no, my family are not believers. And Burnham is like, I believe in science, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I really
totally.
love that. There's often very little space in our cultural imagination for people of color, specifically Black people, who are not like holy rollers, you know? Like it would have, there's a version of these characters, like of a Woshikun who had been like, oh yeah, you know, I grew up in the church and, you know, and then has like a Baptist background or something, you know? Like I appreciated that.
Yeah, absolutely. I agreed with you that, sorry, I'm bouncing around a little bit. The competence porn stuff I was really into, like I felt this episode did that really well with Michael and Tilly.
Yeah.
Like there's that opening scene where Michael is like, sorry, Tilly, you're wrong. Here is the answer of how we solve the problem. And she's so confident in her delivery. And then and then the captain's like, yeah, cool, do it.
Yeah.
Right. Like I love the respect that Michael now commands in this space, because the tension isn't between Michael and the other officers anymore. Right. The tension is, and that was never, I think that actually, now I say that out loud, I feel like that is part of the spirit of Star Trek too, right? Like, not that there isn't interpersonal drama between characters in Star Trek, but that's not the point of the show. The point is that you have this sort of unified crew that's going and doing cool things in the world or trying to solve problems. And this episode felt very much like this united crew of people who are out to solve a problem, figure something out. And you see this when Tilly storms in and says, and they're like, there's 2 minutes until literal apocalypse that's going to take up everyone. And Tilly is like, I know, like she basically was like, here is how we're going to do it. And I know that all of you are skilled enough to do these different things, which is kind of how I came up with the idea as well. Right? Like that, the whole thing between her, I actually don't know the name of the woman with the medal on her face.
The pilot. Oh, Detmer.
So the like that whole exchange where she was like, wait, you want me to do donuts?
Right.
And she's like, yes, that's what I want you to do. Or like, that's not exactly how it went, but that was just so delightful. Like the little moments of levity in this, while I think they're still having a hard time integrating humor, they weren't quite as, what was the word I used last week? Like, they're not quite as aggressively out of place.
Yeah.
So like at the end when Michael walks into Pike's office and he says, don't make me laugh because I might whatever. And she's like, I'm Vulcan. We have no sense of humor. And then they all laugh. Like, that was a funny moment, even if it was a little contrived,
yeah,
you know?
I don't know. I mean, I was going to say that the humor in this episode, because it tended to be around Tilly or delivered by Tilly or perhaps Saru, I'm much more likely to take it from those characters than anyone else. So I still like, you know, the scene that you're referencing with Detmer where she, you know, when she says like, you know, I've had my pilot's license since I was 12, or you want me to do donuts in space or whatever. I was still like, like I like it when Tilly tells jokes. I'm still not down with everyone else being funny.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it's not done great, and I don't think they've integrated well. I think it's better than the first episode, though. So take that with whatever 100%. Grain of salt it is, right? Like, it's progressing in a way that like they'll might maybe figure it out. Yeah. I really like this fucking episode, Ebony.
I know, and I'm really excited to see where this is going. I want to talk about Spock. Real quick, and like the Spock storyline. Yeah, we do, because
can we talk about how creepy it is that they dig through his personal shit? I still can't get over that.
I'm super upset about that. I'm upset about the fact that apparently Spock has been in a psychiatric institution, and Burnham went through his personal effects. And then she says, why was no one in my family informed about this? Pike says, you know, he asked us not to, and we have to, you know, observe his confidentiality request. But then like the priority of the mission supersedes that. And I was super uncomfortable with that. But that's not what I want to talk about. What I want to talk about is, do we have an answer for what universe or what timeline Discovery takes place in? Because I just cannot imagine that someone who was that important to Spock is never mentioned again in all of Star Trek canon. Like, it was just, I think, in this show's desire to introduce these familiar characters to us and to show us kind of like this through line, this red line of connection between past iterations of Star Trek and this new one, they might have made a crucial misstep in having Burnham grow up in Spock's household, because it literally makes no sense that we have never heard Spock refer to his sister before. Not in conversation with Kirk, not in conversation with anyone else. Like, there's no sense of that, nor, like, it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So how is the show going to deal with that, you know?
Yeah, so I did not watch the original series, so I don't have that same feeling of disconnect that I think you're having. Like, is it, like, so it's not, you can't just do suspension of disbelief for the sake of the narrative. Like, it's just that jarring.
Yeah, like, although Spock is never someone who talks a lot about his background and growing up on Vulcan, nevertheless, as time goes on, we do learn more about him. And I just can't imagine, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe someone who is way, way more involved in Star Trek lore than I am can point to, you know, an expanded universe book or something in which Spock mentions something about, you know, a human sibling who his family fostered. I don't know, but I have a hard time buying it that this has never come up before, when it would have been so easy to have Burnham fostered by another Vulcan family. And sure, she can still run up against Kirk. Like, maybe Sarek was one of her teachers, you know, at the Vulcan Academy.
Yeah,
maybe Spock was a childhood friend or something. But having them grow up together in the same family, like, I think it just hampers them narratively, because there's only so much they're going to be able to do if, in fact, these people are very, you know, important to each other, which clearly they are. So even with that tension, knowing that the family has had this tension and Michael and Spock apparently haven't spoken in years, it just, whatever. You know, I'm not going to get into this again, even though I'm thinking about it.
Actually, I would be curious if y'all are original series fans and you have the same feeling, like, or not. Like, I'm super curious how people. I can't weigh in on this because it doesn't mean anything to me. So I'd be curious what everyone else thinks that might have feelings about it. So clearly the main threads through the season are going to be this thing with Spock.
Yeah.
And it is connected to the visions and the signals that are happening. And then it's a part of this larger story that's going to be about, like, religion versus science, which I think is actually, you know, as much as I'm not super interested in it, I think it is very socially timely, right? Like, there are things that the show's trying to do, like the conversation between Saru and Tilly about being, you know, a type of marginalized person trying to move up the ranks in a traditional structure, which those things, I appreciate that they were doing that. They always bother me because I'm like, Star Trek, like, society in the future is supposed to be like, it's supposed to be like, there isn't supposed to be white supremacy and fucking sexism and shit, right? Like, all of the oppressions we're supposed to be living in a liberated society. That is what, like, Starfleet is supposed to represent. But I think that all of Star Trek gets that wrong because we are people who live in those societies and we can't see that when we're writing it into the show, right? And so it was an interesting line for me where I'm like, okay, well, they're talking about being a different race and Starfleet is is dominated by humans. And Tilly is young, and so she has to prove herself. And, like, yeah, I could see those things being real, but I'm always a little bit like, you either have this fucking amazing
egalitarian, Anita?
Egalitarian vision for the future, or you don't. And I just, this always bothers me. And we can pick this out in all these other Star Trek shows too, where they just can't quite figure it out, right? They can't quite, like, they're little biases that come in from the humans today who are making these shows that live in these systems, right?
Yeah, I guess, you know, I had less trouble with that because this is Starfleet, or the Federation rather, in an earlier timeline, or excuse me, an earlier period of history. So there's still some evolving that needs to happen before we get to the later, Voyager, DS9, etc. But also, I do think there's an argument to be made that Starfleet, even though it is not or traditionally has not been purely militaristic. Nevertheless, those sorts of institutions tend to be the slowest to reform and evolve, right? So wherein, the larger society may have achieved a more egalitarian structure, I do think those sort of heavily regimented hierarchical systems are the last ones to achieve that. So I don't know. I didn't feel that as much. But I do think it's interesting because sometimes I wonder when Saru is telling Tilly, like, yeah, I understand, like, I feel the burden on these slender shoulders.
Oh my God, I wrote that down. I was going to bring it up later. That was the most amazing thing where he said,
it was delicious.
He said exactly, I put an inordinate amount of responsibility on these slender shoulders, and he motions to his shoulders. And I was like, I love you so
Doug
much.
Jones, you are the best. But yeah, I have thought about that because one of the questions I perennially have for big science fiction properties like this is, if we say that, Starfleet and the Federation is truly, for lack of a better word, a melting pot of peoples, why is it that so much of the representation that we see is still so tokenistic, right? So you have one Kelpian on board, you'll have one person from another species, whatever. And I'm like, seems like we'd have more visibility.
Yeah, and I think the reality is costuming.
Yeah.
To some degree, right? It's costuming and how big of a cast there is and all of these very practical things that are not satisfying to either of us.
Yeah, because
the reality of the show.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. There's a practical, pragmatic, real world reason for it. But all it would take is an in-show explanation Kelpians tend to prefer these kinds of environmental conditions. So there tend to be all Kelpian ships or whatever. And you're like, okay, realistically, people are hanging out with folks who look primarily like them, and that's it. But we rarely get that. It's like, oh yeah, the lie of merit-based equality is that, the best people will get the job. It just so happens that it's always white men who get it. And it's like, oh, the Federation, we absolutely, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It just so happens that all of our, flagship vessels tend to all be staffed by white men. Come on. Just give me an in-universe explanation for why I'm still only seeing tokens every so often. Whatever. Am I thinking too much about it? No, because this show encourages these kinds of imaginative flights of fancy. There's so much world building that is possible through this show. And I feel like it's finally starting to get it. I'm getting my sense of wonder back with this show. And I'm like, yeah. This is what brought me to Star Trek. I'm excited for next week.
I can't wait to episode 3 when we're like, oh, God.
No, you're going to love it because Tyler's back, right? Isn't that Tyler?
Oh, no.
And you love Tyler.
Okay, hold on. We can't go there yet. Hold on. I want to stay focused on this episode. I want to talk about the Prime Directive stuff, actually, because I think that there's there's two major moral quandaries of this show, of this episode surrounding the Prime Directive is, do they tell, and this was fucking smart, man. There is a humans that are on a planet far away from any galaxy that humans have ever gone to before. They are pre-warp and they have very, very minimal technology, but they're humans. Do you interfere? Right? And some of them suspect that there were technologies. Some of them suspect that there was that there is stuff going on. So that shit between Pike and Burnham arguing about whether they should do it or not, I thought was really interesting, right? It's not do you treat them like a new race or a new alien species that you're actually interfering with? Or do you treat them as humans and be like, hey, welcome to the fucking, you've been sleeping for a while, but here we are.
Right.
And, the show kind of said you interfere, right? Not completely, but at the end when Pike, Michael is like, I think it's more important that you tell them. Pike goes down and tells Jacob, yes, you are right. You are not, because they were being gaslit. He was fully being gaslit. Mm-hmm. And he was like, that is mean to do. I'm going to tell you this thing. And I was watching that and I was relieved in the tension that was built, right? Like, and you feel for Jacob because you're like, man, your whole family's thought that this thing has been happening for 200 years. And all of a sudden it was proved to you and they're telling you the apple in front of you is not a fucking apple. Right. But at the same time, I'm like, I think that that's an interesting moral quandary. Well, I will say this. When I was thinking about how, like, okay, you meet an alien, like, ostensibly this is an alien, right? To some degree, right? You're learning about this major, major transformative technology that you never thought was possible that seems like fucking magic. And the guy teleports away in front of you and you can never talk to them again or ask any of the 5,000 questions that will come up for the rest of your life. Like, that shit gave me so much anxiety.
Same. I felt at the end with Jacob that I was left a little unsatisfied. It felt to me like it got resolved just slightly too quickly and it was a little too pat with Jacob saying, you know what? I just needed to know the truth. And now that I know, that's enough for me. And I felt like the way
it's not. It's
not.
Like, no,
it wouldn't be, you know? And so I was kind of hoping for the Star Trek switcheroo where the person, because this happens periodically in every show, where they come up against someone that who shouldn't know about Starfleet or the Federation, and they wind up taking that person away with them because they're somehow special, right? And they're no longer ever going to be content in their home culture, you know? And so I was kind of like, ooh, let Jacob come on board. Like, let him go away with you. I think, you know, as much as I loved the ethical conundrum set up in this episode, I think they would have been slightly better served if somehow the community that they came upon was actually like pre-industrial rather than just pre-warp. Because it seemed to me that a group of people from the year 2053, you know, their minds would not have been irretrievably broken by the notion that Earth still existed and that space flight, you know, warp travel had been invented, unlike someone from, say, the 1600s, you know? I just felt like, you know, when they first spy the community and they're like, they don't even have electricity. And I'm like, yeah, but they come from a time when that shit can be rebuilt. They're from 2053, right? They have the ideas. It may have taken them a while to get back to the level of technology that they had. But come on, if they were able to build the structures that they built, have the things that they have, look at the clothes that they have. Those are not people who are just like wearing, you know, sheepskin tunics. Like, come on, come on. You're not gonna like break these people's brains if you say to them. And also, like, we've seen Starfleet encounter people before who have gone through time warps or whatever, who have been sort of gently eased back and reoriented into what is now, you know, the present time. So I don't know. I loved the fact of the ethical conundrum that was built into that storyline, but it did resolve a little bit too pat for me.
Totally agree. I think that one of the benefits of the ethical conundrum that was happening was also the building of Pike and Burnham's relationship, which again, I'm basic as fuck. I like Pike. I really do. Like, I'm really enjoying how I'm enjoying how like just kind of good he is. Like, it's just,
you just like how he looks in a leather jacket.
I mean,
on an away mission.
What can I say?
No, he does, but I just feel like it's so basic, you know? Like,
I know, whatever, but I'm also like, there's something nice about just like, you're a nice dude that's like trying to be good. Like, I don't know. I got a lot of shitty dudes around me, so I'm really just
I totally get it. Maybe I'm salty because, as I said last week, I'm just not prepared for there to be a Pike that's not old school Pike or Bruce Greenwood, you know? Like, I only have the space for a certain number of Pikes.
Yeah, I don't have that baggage. I'm just like, man, I'm really enjoying you just not being fucking Lorca and being a skeezy ass fucking fortune cookie.
I know.
Anyways,
Lorca was terrible, but at least he was interesting. Whatever, we will agree to disagree.
It's fine. Yeah. I'm happy. I like the tension being elsewhere for a little bit, at least. The other part of the Prime Directive here that came up was that they were about to suffer a nuclear holocaust, extinction, and there was a question about whether Discovery should do something about it. And that like resolved real fast, where they were like, we must stop this, not just for the sake of our crew, but also for the millions of people on the planet or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was like, that we gotta talk about this a little bit more. There's no way. Like, there's no way that we would sit there and watch an entire civilization die and be murdered.
Right.
But at the same time, we are not trained in Starfleet as, like, you know, being taught General Order 1 as this major thing. Like, is it okay? Is it like, I don't know. What do you think about that? Like, there is a legitimate argument to be made that, like, yeah, you should just watch them all fucking die because that is the course that was set.
The National Geographic conundrum where you're like, okay, I'm watching this adorable ferret get eaten by a cheetah. I'm filming this for National Geographic. Do I step in and save the ferret or do I let nature take its course? Yeah, we've seen this before in Star Trek. There's no way that they're not going to attempt to step in. But because they were able to do it, like the show was able to have it both ways because they were able to affect this solution, that was going to be completely invisible to the people on the planet. I think they would have had to explore the method of that salvation more if it was going to be something that required or, was visible to the people on the planet, right? So if it was like, we can divert all of this radioactive debris, but we've got to come, out of orbit and they're going to see our starship and see us using the transporter beam. Now, can we do it? Or, have we violated General Order 1? So they were able to have it both ways because they were like able to do it, kind of backstage behind the curtain.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Which is a cheat. It's a cheat.
It is a cheat. I mean, it was super fun to watch. I like the Tilly stuff and everything, but I think that like it is an interesting, like this brings up these questions that are why I like this fucking series, the show, not this show, but the series. I think the last thing that we need to touch upon was May, the woman in the sick bay that was there for Tilly. So I was like, wow, when I was listening to her, I was like, oh, we don't get a lot of non-American accents in Star Trek. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is great.
Yep.
Like, I want more of this. And then I was like, and then you see, okay, so they have this beautiful exchange where she's helping Tilly brainstorm and really validating her and her intelligence. And then she's on the bridge. And as the elevator deck or whatever doors are closing,
the turbo lift,
thank you.
Oh boy, every week
it is this
every week
really. Yeah, I don't remember anything. I'm on like 4 hours of sleep, so lucky we've gotten this far. But anyways, you see this moment of like her May being really creepy and weird. And you're like, oh, fuck, you're evil. You took over someone's body. Yeah. You're here to destroy Tilly. What is happening? And then you find out that like, oh, the woman that Tilly thinks that she is, the child that she was raised with as a friend, is actually dead. And so now I'm like, man, why'd you gotta give her an accent and make her evil?
But she may not be evil, right? Like it's gonna turn out that she's might not be the personification of like whatever spirit animates the Red Angel or whatever, right? But no, I agree.
Or Tilly's hallucinating or whatever is happening, right?
When the like maybe it's from proximity to that dark matter or whatever. But when the lift door closes after she says, whatever, Stilly, and I'm just like, this turned into a straight up horror movie. I was fully expecting
I was
like there to be fucking mayhem on the bridge, and the doors would open again, and there would just be bloody bodies. That was some good suspense. Like. Jonathan Frakes, again, I gotta give it up. The man knows how to craft an episode.
The reason that we're not here being like, oh my God, what horrors are going to entail is because they showed the video of her calling her that when she was a kid, and you're like, okay, so this is like a cute thing,
right?
Please don't murder the entire bridge crew.
Listen, don't. But if you do take out some officers, I will rise up if anything happens to Saru or Tilly. I will rise the fuck up. And if something happens to a Woshikun, something's getting set on fire. I'll just say that right now. I know I'm not saying anybody's expendable. I'm just saying find some red shirts to do your dirty deeds upon if you're going to in fact turn out to be evil.
Agreed. I'm there with you. I'll be siding. We'll be back to back with our guns and be like in our leather pants and shit.
Yo,
it'll be cool.
We should do that anyway.
Ebony and Anita. I mean, we should really. Mm-hmm. Next Geek Girl Con, we'll do that.
Oh, okay.
All right. Let's try something new. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So almost in every episode, there's something like that makes no sense or is absurd, or we just really have to point that shit out. So why don't we try to do this new segment called Highly Illogical?
Highly illogical.
I like that, Ebony. You did a lovely job of coming up with these segments.
Well, we didn't get anything super awesome like the Power Ranger spacesuits.
That I still can't stop thinking about that shit.
I can't wait for like the cosplay of those to swing into full gear, because them shits were straight up banana suit.
We need a crew.
Yeah,
we need a crew so we can do that.
Yeah, we do. Oh,
okay, but I've got a couple of really small ones.
Okay,
if you want me to chime in here. So, the sickbay technology is very advanced.
Yeah,
they would be able to repair ribs very quickly. He would not be in a lot of pain for days and wearing a bandage and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, was that just so that they could make the joke about Vulcans being serious?
Yes, because you never know. The story will demand what it demands in terms of medical science in the future. So sometimes you'll have someone like cured of the plague with just a swipe of the medical wand. And then other times it's like, oh no, you're going to be laid up for 2 weeks. No one fucking knows. There's no consistency.
Man, they got to get their shit together. All right, I got one more, which is not necessarily what you were going for this, but I think the title Highly Illogical counts here.
Mm-hmm.
I did not dislike Stamets in this episode.
I did not either. And in fact, I felt so hard for him when he was talking about not wanting to go back into the mycelial network. I was like, oh man, I'm feeling for this person. He's become a human in my mind. I did not want that to happen, but it happened. So yeah.
Yeah. I didn't dislike him in the first episode. I actually I less disliked him, and I'm not quite on liking yet, but I was like, yeah, man. And then when he's like, I can do it in the end, he's like, I can get us there.
Yeah.
And then she's like, run. And he went. I mean, whatever Sarah was like, and I like that. I like that he's coming around. I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop where he's just shitty again.
Same.
So, all right.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah. And mine are very small too. One, Burnham's lip color on the away mission was amazing. And so it's highly illogical to me that she hasn't been wearing that shit every day. Don't understand it. The other one is I always chafe a little bit at 20th century references in future science fiction shows that are set in the future, right? So when they, actually not even just 20th century references, although those are the most egregious for me. So remember last season when there was that dance party, and they were playing like Wyclef or something, and I'm just like, whatever, like no. In
oh god, I just got such a strong flashback to that. I completely forgot
I know.
About that.
Remember?
Yeah, and it was the Tyler and the Burnham, and it was a Tyler.
And Tilly was like, I think Tilly might have been buzzed, and so she was kind of drunk. Whatever. And this one. I get it. But nevertheless, I'm always pulled completely out of a show when they reference 20th century stuff, even iconic 20th century stuff. So the reference to Arthur C. Clarke when they were on the away mission, in service of the whole, point of the away mission, narratively, which was, any sufficiently advanced culture will appear to be magic to, a more primitive culture, primitive in quotation marks. But yeah, I was like, whatever, whatever. At least it was between two humans, even though Burnham did grow up on Vulcan. But, I can see there being some baseline familiarity with famous science fiction authors, even ones that are, 200 to 300 years in the past. It's more egregious when it's like, oh God, who used to do it? I can't remember. Whether it wasn't Worf, maybe it was... And it wasn't Data. Shit, there used to be some alien who would be like, well, as the 14th century, Italian philosopher once said. And I'm like, why do you know that? Why do you fucking know that? There's no reason why you would know like this 14th century Earth philosopher, versus someone from like your own, culture. Give me a fucking break. Anyway.
Yeah. Because I remember getting into an argument, like a big argument with some folks in grad school about how, what was it? It was like Star Trek is imperialism. And I was like, how dare you say that? Star Trek is pure and wonderful. And
oh, baby Anita.
And then I was like, oh, no, they're so right.
Yeah.
They're so right. All right. Let's do everyone's favorite, including mine,
Mm-hmm.
Ebony's weekly hair report.
Yeah.
Take it away.
Very quick. This week, I was mostly a fan of Burnham's hair. I like the thicker, undefined curls, you know, like I just like the way that we see the kind of softer texture. They don't appear to be forcing anything on that luscious, forcey hair. So I was largely a fan of it until about 2/3 of the way through the episode. It looked like, I don't know, her hair was patted down and it just didn't look picked out to its delicious froness. So I'm giving it a B- this week, but I really do feel like we're heading in a smart direction. Take it away, Anita.
We have to. Tilly's hair was fucking amazing in sick bay.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's got.
I like that. This. I want it to be like wilder. I want it to be just like it's so beautiful.
Yeah,
fucking love it.
Tilly is a straight up cinnamon roll. I love her.
Yeah. Oh god, she's great. All right, awesome. Ebony wants us to do ratings apparently. So how should we? What should our rating system be for this?
I think it should be warp factors. So warp 1 through warp 9.
Warp 1 through warp 9. Okay, but so like what is a warp 9? Is it like our all-time favorite Is this Star Trek in the world of Star Trek, or is this in Star Trek in the world of Discovery? Like what's this grading scale?
Oh boy. I was thinking in the world of Star Trek, but we're gonna give like a warp 1 or a warp 2, right? I don't know. I just go with what your gut tells you each week.
Okay, let's do within Star Trek.
Okay,
I mean within Discovery.
Okay.
Sorry, within Discovery, because I think that's what we're doing. I think this was like high in Discovery because I really liked it. So I would give this like an 8.5, 9.
Okay.
Like I really was shocked how much I enjoyed this episode.
Oh, same. I'm giving this a warp 7.4. Really enjoyed it. And if it were not for like the clunky exposition, I would have given it a straight up warp 0.9 or warp 9.
Yeah. Good. Totally agree. Cool. Ebony.
Yes.
Before I talk us out, do you want to give us a little theme song for the week?
Boy, I don't know what I know this is coming every week, and every week I'm not prepared.
But you just freestyle it.
Tilly, don't be a hero. Don't be a fool with your heart. Oh, that's not good. Okay.
All right, y'all. That's our show for the week. I hope you appreciated the like 2% of work that Ebony put in to structure this thing for us.
We're trying. We're getting there.
Yeah, man, I'm into it. I really appreciate it. Join us next week and every week to see what's up on the USS Disco and whether I can find the will to keep going because it does prove difficult. If you like our show or even our main show, Feminist Frequency Radio, please help us keep making it. You can head over to d.rip/femfreak and become a show backer. You get access to some pretty cool perks, if I do say so myself. You can also give us money at feministfrequency.com/donate, which we will accept. We will accept your money in almost any form.
Pretty much.
You want to give us bitcoins? We'll take your fucking bitcoins too, man. I don't know what to do with them, but I would take them. If you would like to support the show but don't want to give us bitcoins, we still love you, and you can do it by rating and reviewing us on iTunes, which helps other people find us as well. Thank you so much for joining us. And I forgot to do the credits. So big thanks go out to our producer, Taylor Simmons, and thanks to Sarah Norales for technical support and Ray Abelar for design wizardry. Thanks, y'all. We'll see you next week.
Goodbye.